evening, everybody, and how are we all doing today? It is Sunday, the 22nd of June, 2025. Is it me, or is things lagging a little? What is going on with my connection? I shouldn't be having slow connection anymore. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. How are we all doing today? Hope everyone has coped with the hot weather that has came this week. I know it's been hot for many of us. It's certainly hot for me as well, but we are here nonetheless. Now, tonight I want to talk about organic gardening, whether you do organic gardening, whether you want to do organic gardening, what you do, what your take on organic gardening is. That is going to be the topic up for discussion. Before that, let's see if we've got anybody here. And first of all, we've got Rob saying the first and good evening, or good evening to you. We have got Nathan saying good evening, all good evening to you. Stuart Jackson, evening, Richard and the Veg Army. Hope you're all well and enjoying the garden. Jenny is there saying hello, everyone. Hope you are well. Turbo Stream, good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. Let me bring this up. Scott is there saying good evening, all. Rob is there saying hi, all again. Saying hello to people. We got Anna Jones. Oh, I'm having real trouble. I don't know what's changed on this screen, but something has. Anna Jones saying good evening, gardeners. Good evening to you. Kate says good evening, Veg Army. Good evening to you. We have got what have we got? There's quite a few I need to miss. Only because when I don't need to talk when you're talking to each other. That's what I say. Nicholas is saying evening one and all. Had rain this morning. It looks like it is just going to downpour any moment now. Lucky you. We'd love a good downpour here at in Littlehampton. Rob says we had rain last night. We didn't have rain last night. We had a bit of rain yesterday, but nothing to really talk about. Over on Instagram, the really small gardener has joined. Welcome along. Lovely to see you. Gary is there saying good evening. First show for a while. Hope you're all okay. Good evening to you. Where have you been? Lovely to see you. Turbo Stream says it's been 30 degrees C here in Birmingham. Hotter than a hot place in a hot heat wave. I'm going to come to that a little bit later. Stuart says too hot when you're away with 30 children trying to keep them all happy. You can never keep 30 children all happy, can you? You cannot keep 30 children all happy. Kate says it was our village festival and an open garden, some incredible gardens, quite a few veg fruit areas too. Good inspiration. Fantastic. Rob also got up to 30 degrees C yesterday. Nicholas says thumbs up all. Turbo Stream says no rain to speak of. The ground is like a dust bowl. And Stuart says I don't use any chemicals in my garden or home at school, but I never know if the compost is organic or not. Okay, so let's get into it. Now, I'm going to put up the thing. If you want to come up, if you've got an idea for a mission, hit hashtag mission and we'll do a draw at the end. But yes, organic gardening. Let me see. How many of you consider yourself to be an organic gardener? Put your hands up if you consider yourself to be an organic gardener. Now, I personally, and I'm going to be a bit controversial here, I personally don't consider myself an organic gardener. I consider myself as somebody who tries to be organic. I try and grow organically, but, and this is a big thing for me, I do not have organic certification. So can I say my food is organic? I could say it, but I couldn't sell it as that. So out of respect for farmers, I say I try to be organic. But what about you? Are you organic or not? Jenny says, I garden organically. I used to use organic feed, but now I just make my own. For me, it's 100% natural with nature. I only buy organic compost from companies I know well. Rob says, not sure of the true meaning of organic. That's a question I'm going to ask a little bit later on, actually. Jenny is waving, or popped hands up. Stuart's putting the hands up. Digwell says, 100% not organic. Interesting there. Rob says hi to Gordon, which I think is meant to be Digwell. Nicholas says, if you buy in compost, unless sold as organic, it's unlikely to be, especially green waste from gardens put into compost. So that actually does hit on the pot. One of the points that I think it's difficult as home or amateur gardeners, it's difficult to say we are organic because everything we use then has to have that organic label. We have to trace back to our compost, our horse manure. Is that all being organic? Has our horses been fed with organically? There's a bit of a limit on how far do we go to work out if we are organic. Turbo Stream says there are rules to be classed as organic, so I guess if we have a certification, then no non-organic. That's my stance as well. Andrew Norris has joined. Evening all. Yes, we are certainly organic. No artificial chemicals whatsoever. Idaho says thumbs up. Good mining, Richard. I think that's meant to be timing. Good morning, sorry, Richard, and all in the chat. Good morning to you, Tabo. Idaho. My hydroponics are not organic. You know, this is the point, actually. Hydroponics generally are not organically grown. There's no organic feed. So this is where we're getting into the realms of can we consider ourselves organic or not? Now, as I said, I class myself as somebody that tries to be organic. I try to make my own compost to use as that. I try and use organic feeds. I don't like to use pesticides. I don't use pesticides. Trying to think if that's strictly true. Sometimes I've used something like razors or things like that, which are technically organic. Anyway, I try not to use pesticides. I definitely don't use weed killer, but I'm not totally against the use in the right circumstances. But yeah, that was a debate we had last week, wasn't it? But are you organic? Are you organic? What have we got? Ian has joined. Evening, Richard and all. Good evening to you. Stuart says, I try my best, but you never know what the garden is next door. There is only a small fence between us, and I couldn't call myself organic. Yeah, exactly. If your neighbours are using something that's non-organic and that drifts over, does that mean you're not organic? But also your supplies, as I said, horse manure and things like that. Does that make it organic? Digwell says, anyone using green waste compost cannot be considered organic. Here we go. This is the debate that I want. This is exactly the debate I want, that we try to be organic, but are we truly organic? Nicholas says, I try to grow without chemicals. Hard to prove, but I don't have knowledge what might be in my soil. Well, we know you've got arsenic in your soil, Nicholas, so this is why you have to use raised beds. But yeah, trying to grow without chemicals. But what is a chemical? What is a chemical? What's so non-organic about chemicals? And I say that because something like phosphorus is a chemical. That's an element. Would that be considered? But phosphorus is known to be in plant feeds. It's known that plants need phosphorus to encourage flowering. Is that then organic? Scott says, I don't use chemicals, but I don't worry if my compost isn't organic. There we go. I think we're getting down to the nitty gritty there. Anna says, I resist using chemicals where I can, but not 100% organic. I honestly don't think that anybody can say they are 100% organic. I think it is a case that they try to be organic. Even the best willed person, they try to be organic, but it's hard to be 100% organic. Turboxstrom says, I don't use chemicals, so I garden in an organic way, but we can't guarantee if the fertilizer or compost is organic. Well, that's where certification is meant. If you're buying it in, that's where certification is meant to be. Now, Jenny says, I don't remove slugs, let alone use chemicals. I grow organically, but I do have seeds from yourself, Digwell, etc., which are not organic. Yes. But all grown completely naturally. So I say I grow organically. I like that, actually. I do like that term, I grow organically. I think that's a better way of phrasing it, because we will try to grow organically. But yes, seeds, you can't guarantee your seeds are organic. I mean, you could, but you can't necessarily guarantee that. Jenny says, I also want to start saving my own seeds. And then Digger says these are organic pesticides. There are organic pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, etc., etc. Yeah, there are organic of everything that I try not to use. And this is actually an interesting point here, Digger, because I think some people believe that if they're not using anything with killer in the name, they're being organic. And that is not strictly true, as we know. This is a really good point. There are organic pesticides, there are organic weed killers, there are organic whatever you might call it. You can make your own weed killer using vinegar and salt and dishwasher. Does that mean that is that necessarily organic? Get really into a good debate here, I feel. The biggest motivation is my health, as it is linked to chemicals in the food chain. So this seems like a good point with that comment. So why do you want to grow, if you are growing organically, why do you want to grow organically, or why do you try to grow organically? Or if you don't grow organically, do you want to, or do you feel you need to, or why do you choose not to? Next question for you. Why do you grow organically, or why don't you grow organically, in a nutshell? Turbo Stream says, are the seeds we buy organic? Then unless they are no, they are then again no. King seeds do an organic range. It depends. It does depend. Some seeds can be organic, some seeds are not. It really depends. Again, they have to have that label. But even if they haven't got that label, they could still be organically grown. It's just they haven't got the certification. It's very expensive to have that certification as well to say they are organic. So yeah, this is the nitty gritty of it, isn't it? It's where we're trying to really go into town and find out how far back do we go to keep the organic label. My land has never seen a chemical. People in the past add manure and no money for artificial stuff. But were your horses, were the horses or the animals from what the manure got, were they organically fed? Because if they weren't, then there's the element that chemical traces could be in the manure. So I'm opening this up. This is a debate. This is a debate that I think we need to have about this whole organic label. Turbo Stream says it seems very hard to be organic 100%. It really is. And Digwet says under the Soil Association organic standards, all weed killers are banned. There we go. There we go. And they set the standards for organic growing, organic label. All seeds are banned. Dobbies do an organic seed, organics do an organic seed, organic seeds. Yeah, they do. A lot of people do. Most places will do an organic range, usually quite a bit more expensive than the standard. Nicholas says, all my compost produced at home is organic as nothing goes on my pasture. So horse manure is good when it goes into compost bins. There we go. Therefore, and actually, Nick, that's a very good example of somebody that's able to prove their manure is organic because you have your own horses, you've got your own animals that you're feeding organically. This is actually where I kind of find myself when I think about organic gardening, how far back we have to go. Do we need our own horses? Do we need our own animals that we feed organically to be organic? Nathan says, I try to be my best to be organic on the allotment, but quite difficult when next door neighbours use pesticides. Yeah. Rob says, I never call myself or my garden organic just in case. I'm with you. Jenny says, the increase of glyphosate mirrors the increase in various conditions with stomach and indigestion, particularly celiac disease. Yeah, doesn't surprise me there. I mean, again, I think that is a problem with pesticides or herbicides. But Digwell has come up with a very good point. Maybe the word organic should be changed for natural. And I'm with you on that because I do consider myself that I try to work with nature. I try to be a natural gardener as much as I possibly can. I use rainwater, which, as we know, doesn't have chemicals. If you are using tap water, there's chlorine, there's chemicals in the tap water that I would say then you're not organic. So I try to be natural as possible. I encourage birds, I encourage wildlife into my garden to take care of all the pests. Natural, 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 natural. That's a key thing there. And I think that is a better way of phrasing it. Thank you, Digwell. Vinegar and dish soap, organic. Exactly. Is that organic? I don't think it is. I grow organically to respect the tradition here and respect the land, says Andrew. Absolutely. And Nicholas says, and the organic seeds arrive in plastic and metal foil packs. Some do, don't they? There are some companies out there that don't. Idaho says, I try to grow as organic as possible, but I'm not certified organic. I have no idea what my neighbours use, and I know the country sprays for mosquitoes and weeds along the road in my driveways. Exactly. Adrian has joined. Hello, Richard and all. Hello to you. We're talking about organic gardening. Scott says, I would say I garden naturally and don't worry about it being organic. I think for supermarkets, organic is a ticket to sell at massive price, but I know it costs more to produce. I think we have to respect, and I'm not going to get on the back of any farmers or anybody producing food organically, because that is the right steps to take. I still think, and I've said this before, I think having the organic label is the wrong way round. I personally think that the food that has got the chemical sprayed on it should be more expensive. The organic label food should be the cheaper food, and it shouldn't cost people to be organic. It should cost people to not be organic. When I say cost to be organic, I mean the farmers paying for the certification to be organic. I personally think they should get inspected, of course, and if they are organic, they get a pass. If they're not organic, that should all be funded by the non-organic people. I think that is the better way to do this. Kate says, I'm more wildlife friendly in my gardening style. Again, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that completely. Nicholas says, unfortunately, some organic organisations in other countries give certification because it is bought and not tested and of land processes. Yeah. I don't really want to get the behind the scenes of that and things like that, because I don't know and I don't want to get in trouble for saying the wrong thing. Stuart says, I would not use chemicals, as if the spray kills bugs, how do we know it doesn't harm the birds, etc.? Exactly. I've got my dog here, as many of you know, and I don't want anything to happen to her. If an animal comes along and eats, if Roxy comes along and eats, say, a rat that's eaten some rat poison and it kills her, I'm not going to be happy at all. Not going to be happy at all, and it's only my own fault. So, yeah, with you on that. Andrew says there were cows, but they were always fed grass cut on people's land. And there we go. So this is the point of proving that you are organic by having your own animals. It's starting to make me think about using my chickens more again. Turbo Stream says, if you take the trouble to grow your own food, then why would you spray it with chemicals? Seems counterintuitive to me. Absolutely. This is my point as well. Now, I'm not going to slate anybody who wants to grow their own food and they grabs weed killer or they use things that I don't agree with. Everybody grows food their own way. Now, not everybody grows food because they want to be organic. They don't always grow food because they want to be healthy. Quite often they want to grow food because it's a fun hobby. It's something they want to do. And that's absolutely fine. Some people, however, do grow food because they want to be as organic as possible. Again, that's absolutely fine as well. Idaho says, I want to be organic, but I have to be practical and realistic. Absolutely. Jenny says, a farmer I follow grows organically, but his neighbours use spray on his field. So because of leaching and runoff and blowover, he can't get organic certification. Absolutely. Idaho says, I've read that one. Came up again. Sorry, my chat got duplicated. Now, Gary says, if I have some organic fruit and it's fertilized from some non-organic neighbor, is that still organic? I would say it's not. Even though it's nothing that you've done, it's not organic, unfortunately. And that's not your fault. It's just because of that non-organic stuff. Rob says, does your soil need to be tested for a few years before you can call your produce organic? If you are a farmer, then yes, that is the case. If you're not a farmer, then you don't have to be tested. And this is where I think, as us vegetable gardeners would say, we're lucky. We don't get tested. We don't need all those sort of things, but we do need to think about it. Scott says the thing is with manure and most animals in their lifetime, they will need medication. Yeah, so again, this is where medication and that comes out into the soil. But if we, as humans, we take medication, it's a real tricky one. This is where I find the organic label to be a really difficult thing to get our head around and overcomplicated, which is why I consider myself a natural gardener. Turbo Stu says, I make my own leaf mold, and this year I tried to use it on seed compost. Hardly anything germinated, so I wonder what the leaves have had on them. Could be anything. Could be anything. Jenny says, the cyanide in my laurel shrubs are organic. Yep. And Digrat says, organic food can never be cheaper as it is more expensive to grow organically. More losses, more pest damage, etc., etc. Yeah, but my point being that the non-organic food should be more expensive in my eyes. Should be more expensive. And that extra expense should be funding the organic food revolution, shall we say. So you tax, and you know I'm against any tax. I'm very much I would call myself a bit of an anarchist. I would tax the non-organic food to fund the organic food. That might be a way to do it. Totally agree, Richard. A tax on non-organic growers. There we go. Scott's just said it. A tax on non-organic growers would force the industry into a change, but it would hit farmers, not the supermarkets. Not if tax is at the end of it. Gary says, is there any evidence that non-organic food is more dangerous to eat than non-organic? Good question. Very good question. Is there any evidence? Or is being organic about protecting the environment rather than what we eat? That is a very good question, Gary, because I'm sitting here saying we want to be organic. And I think from what I'm reading, most of us want to be organic. We don't want to be digesting chemicals because we don't know what it's going to be doing to us. But is there any evidence? Is there actually any evidence? Very good question. Very good question. I think there is evidence, but is it conclusive? We don't know. Rob says, I think you are right in what you just said, Gary. I'm getting stuck here. Doodle Sparkle, hi, organic all the way for me. We don't use anything chemical in our allotment. I get the frustration though with pests. Yeah, I mean, slugs and snails and things like that, they can be really annoying, but they're part of nature. They're part of the ecosystem. We have to just put up with it. Digwell says the organic standard is used in over 68 countries. Materials used must be at least 95% organic. If the material is 70% organic, it can be labelled as made with organic materials. Interesting. Non-organic food, says Nicola, has been fed chemical fertilizer and sprayed through. It's growing a residue which will be in plants or fruits which can build up in our bodies. As Gary is asking, is there any actual proof of that? I'm not saying there isn't, but is there any actual proof of that? Turbo Stream says, I wanted to cut down my patch of field beans this week. I noticed there were ladybirds on them as the field beans were covered in black fly. I couldn't chop them down. There you go. So this feels like, if you are organic, what measures do you take to be organic? What can you realistically do to try and be as organic as you can? Now, I've already said that for me, I try to be organic. I try to use organic feeds and fertilizers. To be honest, I'm trying not to use feeds and fertilizers as much as possible. I'm relying solely, I really want compost to do the work for me, but feeds and fertilizers try and be organic. I don't use weed killer. I don't use pesticides. I encourage birds, hedgehogs, ladybirds, hoverflies, lacewings into my garden, into my allotment to do the work for me. But it's not foolproof. It's not foolproof at all. Other things that I try and do, I've made my own foods, plant feed, that is. I have, I'm trying to think what other steps I take. it'll come to me in a bit, other steps that I take to be as organic as possible. We'll talk of that. Green manures, that's another one I use, actually. I noted my broad beans were spared mostly from blackfly, perhaps accidentally created a sacrificial sap for blackfly. Possibly. It would make sense. It would make a lot of sense. Digwell says, we mentioned Colorado beetle a few weeks ago. If there was a severe outbreak in the UK, there would be no organic spuds, as there is no organic remedy other than relying on predators. Yeah, that's if it gets to that point. We've got to keep a close eye on seeing what happens there. I was talking to somebody at Gardener's World Live about it, so it's interesting. Chili Gate says, hello. I don't know if I said hello to you, actually. I think unless you've seen the inside of farming, that you would have a pretty outdated view of things like pesticide usage. My eyes have been very much open and have been pleasantly surprised. Tell us more, Chili Kate, because I love to know. I'm a big supporter of farmers, as you know, and I would love to know more. I've been particularly watching things like Clarkson's Farm and things, but I liked, like Clarkson, actually, he wanted cows to add manure to the ground that it was going to grow in to be a natural plant food. So I want to know. I want to know more about the farming side of things there. That would be really good to know. Over on Instagram, the Messy Volunteer has joined. If you haven't heard this week's podcast, you would have heard Kate on the podcast talking about her show garden, the Nectary, which was one of my it was my favourite garden at Gardener's World Live. Plus, the honey is delicious. Jenny says, unfortunately, organic farming for hardly covered in the curriculum for farming students. It's all weak and fertilizer centre, driven by government funding, etc. So, again, something I learned from Clarkson's Farm. I know that's probably not the most safe place to get information from, but something I learned is that they do spray glyphosate on the crop. So if we're eating bread, we're all eating glyphosate. Although they'd say it's not in the food, but it is weed killed, so it's already. It kind of makes sense when you think about it like that. Scott says, good point. You could tax the end of the food chain. The buyers like supermarkets then would quickly invest at the end of recurring the chemicals. Yeah, it would cause a big change. Rob says, I found it great when I built my veg bit cage. Don't get many cabbage whites at all now. There we go. I was asking for how do you tackle or how do you be organic? Building a netting around your cabbages, your brassicas, that would work possible. Digra says, how did you condition your straw bales? I used urea, which I believe to be organic, but thinking about it, and thank you, Digwell, it may not be. I used urea, so it may not be organic. I would imagine it is, but I can't remember seeing any organic label on it. Jenny says, there are many studies, but as I understand it, there are too many variables to state as proof. Unfortunately, it's the money bosses have a big say. Yeah. The fisherman says, there's a lot of loopholes in things. Most farm shops just buy in veg. People think it's on the farm. A lot isn't. Yeah. The trouble is, again, the farming, unless you've got a farm that grows everything, it's very difficult to grow everything. That's why you have specialized farmers. But I like farm shops that support local farmers. So they might have a dairy herd. They might be a dairy farm, but they also sell peas from a farm across the road and wheat from another farm down the road. That's what I like about some farm shops. But yeah, it's a lot of loopholes. Doodle Sparkle says, we know chemicals in our hygiene products aren't good, so consuming them through our food can't be good either over time. And this, again, is one of the questions that when Gary asked, is there any evidence? The thing is, we don't know what happens over time. I heard that they're uncovering microplastics inside humans, little bits of plastic, which I find quite worrying in some ways. And I'm not an anti-plastic person, but microplastic inside us can be a bit of a worry. Turbo Stream says, I grab my cauliflowers behind veggie mesh now. Seems to ward off most of the green fly, although this year there was a lot on the leaves. The cauliflower hearts were okay. So again, another one for netting. Gary has came up mission. Book a commercial grower for the podcast interview to talk about differences between home growing and farming. There we go. That's a mission. If that comes up at the end, we will find out. Digbert says urea is non-organic. So there you go. I've just fallen at the first hurdle. This is what I always. That's why I steer away from calling myself an organic gardener. Is there, okay, in the case of straw bales, is there an organic thing we could use? What do you think on that? Rob says, as I own my own business, I can buy from some of the same places farmers do. Turbo Stream, I do think what upsets my digestion certainly doesn't help with my suspected hiatus hernia. I should give it up, but why? What do I spread on my homemade jam on? What could you spread your homemade jam on instead of bread? How about, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something I can't think. How can farmers' shops sell pineapples? They can't. Unless they're supporting a. Well, pineapples can be grown in the UK, but yeah, I'm with you. Chili says, I'm reluctant to say too much because I feel like people's minds are very much made up, and I'm planting my. I don't know what it is about melons. Whenever you say something about the melons, it just makes me laugh. Chili, please feel free to say whatever you want, because as long as we do it from a respectful view, and this is, I'm not saying you're not. This is something I've always said that we are very good at. We all have different views, but we can all express our different views and stake like that. So I'm very, very happy to, as long as it's done respectfully. And I will make sure that anybody says anything out of order, I will sort it. Digbert says, anyone using human waste cannot be considered organic. Yeah, I know. Microplastic has been found in breast milk and placenta. It's shocking. Totally agree with you on the human waste. Thanks, Lee. Scones, says Rob. Scones. Beddoes, evening all, watching but having to keep a one-year-old Elsie out of the cupboards. Welcome along, Beddoes, and welcome along, Elsie. Elsie, stay out of the cupboards, please. Hey, Beddoes, your granddad, I think it's your granddad, needs to watch us and learn how to grow all those peas that you like eating. Turbo Stream says, just breathing the air or drinking tap water is probably bad for us nowadays. Yeah. What have we got? Digbert says, forever chemicals and microplastics are here to stay. Too late to reduce the levels now. Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Again, we're getting into worlds that I don't know enough about, and people have different positions on it. Gary says, I'd like to hear more, Kate. Idaho says, people taste prescription drugs, medications, and supplements. It leaves the body in waste. I don't want that pot on my garden. Yeah. Again, this is something that we were talking about earlier. Scones are made from wheat, though, Rob. Oh, yeah, that's what it was. Nice gluten-free bread. Farm shop is just a new term for greengrocer. Stuart says, microplastics are commonly found in fresh fish, so we are all eating it. We discussed this at children at school. It's scary, isn't it? It's scary, and I don't know enough about it, I'm going to be honest, so I'm going to learn something from it, I think, is a way to do it. It's not gluten, Jen, says Turbo Stream. I had the blood test. I think it's just, it irritates my digestive system. There we go. NYO, I hope I pronounced that name right. I have cancer and feel ill when I eat non-organic food, be it meat, veg, or dairy. But I feel good and have more energy when I eat only organic and grow my own freshly harvested food at his best. Well, obviously, I'm very sorry to hear that you have cancer, Enyo. I'm going to say Enyo. Very, very, very sorry to hear that. You have our sympathies, and I hope you're going to survive. Whatever. I know it's a very difficult conversation, but that is very interesting that you really do notice a difference between organic and non-organic food. So if you're noticing a difference, there must be something in it. There must be something in it. Jenny says, Turbo, you can pass the blood test and still be celiac. You can also be gluten sensitive. To avoid gluten, you need to avoid wheat, barley, and rye. There we go. And Digger says, human waste fertilizer is big business in the UK. Many, many farms use it. Yeah. Well, there was a way of trying to get rid of the stuff, wasn't it, from our waste recycling. That's not the right waste treatment places. But then I've always worried I've been studying how waste treatment centers work, but it still worries me. What we got? Turbo Stream says, ultimately, we grow our own to know with certainty where our food we grow comes from. We can't control much else. I think that's very true. That is very true. Chili Cake says, okay, some examples that surprise me are how much pollinator and natural predator attracting plants are used. From memory, 1/3 put over to these weeding by hand. From memory, 1/3. Okay, so 1/3 was put in. 1/3 of the land was put in for natural print. Again, that doesn't surprise me because it's well known that the farmers are putting in wildflower meadows and things. So it doesn't surprise me, but it is a good start. Nicholas says, for every chemicals come out of plastic and non-stick pans, etc. Now there is a push to get rid of plastic and go back to glass, cling wrap, grease-proof, non-stick, stainless steel, or cast iron. I'm trying to use glass a bit more, admittedly. My lunchbox is a glass lunchbox now. Yes, Jenny, it's gone, so I'll come back to that one. Jenny says, if I eat supermarket veg, I will be ill. I will react in a few days and feel terrible. I have to eat organic. I have long-term damage, all linked to food. Again, very, very sorry to hear that. Now, it is, I think, Chili Cake, just quickly, the extent that must be gone to justify the use of pesticides, not to mention ever reducing residue levels. Yeah, I'm sure that is a lot. Now, talking of natural predators, it's time for this week's mission. And this week's mission, I'm not sure if I passed it or not, and you'll see why, but it was to make a scarecrow. A natural predator, or it's an organic way of gardening? What do you think? Okay, so for this week's mission, you challenged me to make a scarecrow, and what I have here is my scarecrow. Very rough, I know. This is actually a scarecrow I made as a mission last year, and I just simply took this wood and made an X, and then we tied some trousers to it, put a t-shirt over it, stuck it in the ground, and it's been my scarecrow ever since. The trouble I've had is this scarecrow has a tendency to fall over. Even though it's stuck in the ground, it's not in the ground solid. So how I've improved it, on the ground, I've put it in a bucket of postcrete. Now the postcrete is still drying. It's a bit too much water in it, if I'm honest. I had some postcrete left over, so I just wanted to use it up and not waste it. So it's now a bit more solid and stays where it is, but also means I can move this scarecrow around. One of the key things to remember is that if I look at many of my young plants down here at the moment, they're being eaten by pigeons and things. So if a scarecrow is in the same position, the birds will get used to it. So by simply being able to move it around maybe once a day, makes it a little bit more effective at scaring off the pigeons from my plants. And that's what we're going to do. So let me know, what do you think? Is that a mission passed, or a mission accomplished, or a mission failed? Let me know in the comments. Indeed, is that mission accomplished or mission failed? Bear in mind, I copied what I did last year. I just improved upon it. But one of the key things that I said, and this is where I believe scarecrows work best, is we need to be able to move them around. Yes, it's heavy to move that around, but I can move it around quite easily. And that should hopefully keep the pigeons on their toes. That is a organic way, I guess, of tackling pigeons, keeping pigeons off our brassicas. What do you think? What do you think? Over on Instagram, the Garden of Waters has joined. Now, Scott says organic is definitely better for you. If hospitals served homemade food using organic produce, it would save the NHS a fortune. Less long stays are as you get better quicker. Yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of things to say on that, and you've just made me choose the rent of the week. Stuart says, as I was away this week, no veg in my diet for 3 days. My energy levels dropped off, so going a bit mad with fruit and vegetables. Since I came home, I can tell the difference. Now, this is actually a really good point. When I was traveling on that week, traveling the country to our source Stuart himself, we were living, obviously, in even up to Gardener's World last week, living off pub food and things like that. And I think we did have a few bananas and stuff for lunch, but there was a lot of, I won't say non-healthy food, but it was a lot of sort of, I wouldn't even say crap food because I mixed it up quite a bit, but it was a lot of non-organic food, not missing the fruit and veg. But as soon as I got home, I started eating. I pretty much every day I will eat grapes. I got home, I had a handful of grapes, and I just immediately felt better for it. Same as smoothies. When I have smoothies, I just instantly feel incredibly healthy, especially when it's some of our homegrown fruit. Tayberries at the moment are gooseberries, etc., etc. Jenny says to Turbo, gluten-free bread, there is crap stuff, but also some nice bread nowadays. Try it for a month and see. Grazer's G1 for the pigeon, says Digger. I tried it before and I didn't find it worked that well, in my opinion. Chili Cake says, just to point out, there are agricultural products in every food you eat, not just the fruit and veg aisle. Yeah, again, I agree completely with that. You will not hear me complaining about farmers at all. They work damn hard for very little reward. Yeah. Digwell says best colours to scare pigeons are red and yellow, and with a bit of reflective stuff if possible. So perhaps I should put one of my what do you call them? High vis jackets on the Scarecrow. I love the Scarecrow with the added bonus of its movable pass, I think. Thank you. Ian says, don't forget to like, guys. Yeah, please do like, follow, subscribe, and click the notification bell so that you know when we go live. Rob says, best thing to scare pigeons off is some pastry ready to get a filling. Pigeon pie. But the NHS is all about cost cutting now, not in 4 weeks' time. Totally. Gary says, thanks, Kate, is reduce residue levels due to changes in use over time or developments in pest. Is to reducing residue levels due to changes in use over time or developments in pesticide technology. Idaho says, great Scarecrow. Instead of stuffing the t-shirt, the empty shirt will move a bit in the wind, gives it motion. That's my thought as well. That is exactly the same with the trousers. They will move a bit in the wind. I know it's a manky old t-shirt and what have you, but it's easy enough to change over. But I figured it will move in the wind. It should hopefully then scare birds off a little bit more. My wife drinks to bottles of grape juice a week called Chardonnay. One of the 5 a day, says Digwell. Yeah. Is barley one of your 5 a day? I don't know. That's something up to everybody else. Okay, so let's really find out what other organic gardening methods do you use? Or let's open this up, because I think we've decided amongst ourselves, and everybody's open out to their own opinion. We're more natural gardeners. We work with nature. I think that's the way we go. What methods do you use yourselves? As I've said, I try to use scarecrows, netting, although I don't really like netting over my plants. Um, the reason I don't like netting over my plants is that one, I've found birds trapped in a neighbour's netting on the allotment once, and I had to cut that netting away to free that bird. So I'm always worried about that happening to birds. Two, I find when I've got my netting over, it's a barrier for me to get in there and start weeding. So I tend to not pot stuff over my plants. But it does work. It does work in a better way. What else do I do? Yeah, try and be organic or use things that are natural as possible. What have we got? What have we got? Gary says beer has hops and grain in it. That's got to be 2. There we go. There we go. Turbo Stream says those clothes have plenty of life in them yet. What a waste. You know me. I'm sure you know by now. I wear my clothes until they are dead. Even when they're too small, like this t-shirt at the moment, I will wear my clothes until they are dead. Falling apart, and that's still plenty of wear in it. What happens then, Steve? Oh, what's that? A certain Welsh channel would still be wearing it. Yeah. Drip feeding. Conversation going on there. He would dig well indeed. Over on Instagram, Jamie's little allotment has joined. Welcome along. Lovely to see you. So far, we have only got one entry for the mission, which was Gary, if I remember correctly. Gary, can you remind me what it was? Or did Jenny take note of it? Stuart says, I feed the birds and in turn they help with harvesting the bugs out of the plants, hopefully. So this is actually something I do genuinely believe. I feed the birds. I've got a brand new bird feeder in my garden and I'm trying to encourage more, I want to get more bird feeders, bird drinkers as well, bird houses, bug hotels. I want to encourage more ladybirds. I really want to encourage a lot more natural predators into my garden. Nematodes. I tried nematodes last year, but they worked. They were good, but I don't think on a cost basis they were worth the extra expense. Oh, excuse me, my brain's trying to get oxygen in order to think. But nematodes were a organic method as well. Nematodes are like tiny little worms that attack, if they're slug and snail nematodes, they attack slugs and snails. They're a natural predator. They were good. They were quite a good way. And Nyo says, handful of worm casts around plants supercharges growth better than synthetic fertilizers or concrete tea mix with shredded potato and seaweed and water mix. Absolutely. I'm a big fan of wormeries. I use a lot of worm compost myself, vermicompost. I want to make a lot of it as well. But I'm a big fan of worm compost as well. It's a great one. Jenny said, book a commercial grower for a podcast. That was a mission, I think. That can be tricky, but yeah, that was the mission. But don't forget, you can all come up with your own mission as well. And of course, we will have a cook along and things like that. We've still got the potato salad coming up. Has anybody got anything they want to add to this discussion about organic gardening? Because I'm surprised. We had a really good debate. I'm surprised that we haven't had any arguments about this. I'm surprised that we've all sort of seemed to be on the same page. Digwell says slug nematodes work too well. They will kill all 40 varieties of slugs, not just the living plant eating ones. The 32 other beneficials ones die off too. Yeah. It is pretty indiscriminate to use nematodes. And again, that's something another reason I've moved away. But you can say the same about birds. They're going to eat slugs regardless of how good they are or anything. Scott says, mission, create one bed that could get an organic certificate and revisit it after a year of gardening to compare with your normal gardening methods in other areas. Okay, I've got bed that is becoming empty, so we could do that. That could be, I mean, again, it all depends on the drawer. All depends on the drawer. Jenny says, rather than feeding, I chop and drop. The soil loves it. I don't use nets or anything, just Mother Nature. Chop and drop. So I now have got a better understanding of chop and drop since talking to you guys. In the past, I didn't quite understand it, but it's simply, if you take a pruning, you chop it up into small pieces and you place it on the ground where it came from, below the tree or the branch where it came from. A bit like when you hoe in a bed and you leave the weeds to dry out on the soil. So that's how I understand chop and drop now. Idaho says weed barrier, wire mesh and over seedlings to prevent rodents and birds, very fine mesh over small hoops to block cabbage white and aphids, sometimes by ladybird beetles and mantis eggs to release into my garden. Good methods there. Again, it's things we've all been looking at as well. Digwell says, and you still have to kill the snails as nematodes don't. Yeah, exactly. There are nematodes for snails, if I'm not mistaken, though. Chili Cakes, no arguments, but I have nearly switched off. No offense, but so much, so much misinformation. No offense taken. Tell me please feel free to tell me if I've said anything that I'm misinformed on. Again, I know you work in that field, so I take on your information there. Nicholas says, I don't think my duck knows the difference either. Difference between, slugs or snails. Yeah, slugs or snails. Jenny says, well said, Digwell. Most people don't realise this, and I bet it's not on the package. Yeah. Turbo Stream says, we're mostly gardeners that want to better our health. So I doubt many who listen and watch the Veg Grow podcast are not surprised we mostly agree on organic principles. I think that's probably right. I think we do generally agree on organic principles. As I said, when it comes to the farmers, it's a very different field. Chop and drop, what the plant takes, it returns. Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. It does make a lot of sense completely. Chop and drop. Not something I've done. I don't know why I've not done chop and drop, to be honest. I've tried it. Well, I kind of have done it. I think the trouble is with most of us gardeners is that we are too tidy. We try and clear things away to be tidy because we want a good looking garden. We want a good looking allotment. Nature in itself is not tidy. It is a bit of a mess. It is scruffy. Bugs and things live in dead material. Slugs and snails will eat dead, decaying material. Woodlice will also do that. I've completely lost my train of thought there, so apologies for that. Bring me back. Rebecca says, evening, Richard. Apologies for being late. No worries, Rebecca. We're talking about organic gardening, and actually, I think it was you that was talking about week in, was it last week, that sort of sparked this conversation off. What do you understand organic gardening to be, and what organic gardening principles do you take? Exactly, that's his doodle. I think that's in reply to we all get a lot of doing it. Jenny says, I'm everything but tidy. Exactly, same here. I'm really not a tidy person, and I will admit that. Scott says, recipe, create a homemade pot noodle to take to earth, etc., using dried rice noodles and veg from the allotment. Finish live on the show by boiling the kettle and finishing it off. Okay, that's an idea. That could work. The nematodes below the surface and kill below ground levels 1, 2. That is why they're inefficient with snails. Yeah. I mean, it's a hard one, isn't it? When it nematodes and understanding everything. But yeah, the more we discuss this, this is the key thing. I think the more we discuss this, the more we can learn and expand our knowledge. This is one of the things that I always believe in. Even when I disagree with somebody, I've always believed in being able to have a discussion about it, because I think it's a good way for everybody to learn. No, I really cannot pronounce your name. I'm really sorry. No, sleepwater and diatomaceous earth around your young plants till they get going, and water direct into the ground with something like a tomato halo. Top of the grounds remains dry, so no wet surface to attract slugs. That's a good way of dealing with it. Yeah, I like that. I like that. I totally like that. Turbo Stream says, "Free or wrong, Chili Cake? We need to know. I think I certainly won't be offended if I am wrong. Like many, I'm just trying my best." Yeah, with you on that. Me too, Jenny, especially being ADHD. And glad I'm not alone, guys, talking about being messy. Yeah, totally. A bit of a ramen pot then. Ramen. Absolutely. I've never used nematodes. Find them very expensive. That's one of the downsides of nematodes. They are very expensive and you need to reapply them. And the thing is, like, let's take the slugs and snails. They will only deal with the slugs in your soil. If your neighbour's got slugs and snails, they're going to come over. Nature hates a vacuum. Nature hates a vacuum. So slugs and snails, if there's no slugs and snails, they're going to come in from somewhere. They're going to fill that void. Nature is a balance. And this is one of the key things I think we have to remember. Nature is a balance. Slugs and snails are part of the ecosystem. As are birds, as are everything that we get annoyed with. They are part of the ecosystem and they have certain things that they need to do. Oh, yeah, I like that. Rebecca says, I garden organically. I don't use any chemicals. I've really worked hard to let my garden have a good balance with itself. I don't have problems with pests. Yeah, exactly what I'm saying as well. Stuart says, a messy garden is good for nature. Well, that's what I tell my wife. It's what I tell my wife as well. Scott says, exactly that, Steve, with a stock powder and soy sachet, so just boiling water needed. Do you remember when I made dehydrated stock stuff? Sorry, but we cooked dinner during the show. It doesn't aid being actively involved. Phil thinks I'm slacking. Fair enough, Chili. Fair enough, Kate. I know you cook dinner, so fair enough. Fair enough. Although I would say, Phil, you could get out there if you think your wife's slacking. You could get out there and help her cook. I'm not. You might be, for all I know. Actually, I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to say that. What's for dinner, Kate? There we go. And Gary says, actually, expensive is a point. I don't buy organic in a supermarket because non-organic is cheaper. I don't use many additives, feeds, etc., organic or not, because they are expensive. Yes. So this is actually a very good point. This is incredibly a good point. This is one of the things that I think we have to acknowledge, that organic food, as we said earlier, is more expensive than non-organic food. And as I said, I think that's the wrong way around, my opinion. But at the same time, organic feeds and fertilizers are expensive. Anything we want to do organically can be expensive. And not everybody has the luxury of being able to make or have enough space to have, say, a comfrey plant or a nettle patch in order to make their own natural fertilizers and feeds. And the same with compost bins. Something as simple as a compost bin. If you've only got a balcony garden, you may not be able to have a compost bin. You might have a wormery, but it is expensive to be organic. And we do have to acknowledge that. We do have to acknowledge that. You are right there. But I do believe when we grow our own, it does become a little bit cheaper. There we go. And one might argue that nematodes might be organic, but that doesn't mean they are having a negative impact on the net. They aren't. Yes, This is exactly it. This is exactly why I have the problem with organic gardening. So that's exactly what I was saying. Nature abhors, hates a vacuum. And if we are using nematodes that are killing off the slugs and snails, it doesn't bring in the natural balance of biodiversity. So perhaps that's the point. Perhaps that's we can move away from the organic label and we call ourselves biodiverse gardeners. Natural gardeners, I think, is better. Yeah, totally with you on that. June is just doing me some supper. Jenny says, "Great point, Kate. I will not touch nematodes." Now, I did last year, but I'm not going to anymore. I learned something through conversations with you guys. My friend throws slug pellets down like you wouldn't believe. His garden is covered in slugs. I've never used slugs. I've never used pellets or anything, and I have no slugs. This is it. This is exactly it. Because when you're, again, I'm no scientist on this. When we use something like slug pellets, it used to be, I believe it's different now, but it used to be that whatever ate those slugs would also be poisoned, especially if it ate a lot of them. So the owls that might eat the slugs and snails, that would poison the owls, and then that would leave less natural predators. And this again comes back to, we're kind of really getting to the point now, biodiversity. Phil was cooking masala chicken on the barbecue and heating up the pizza oven. I'm on salad. Teamwork. That's what I like. Teamwork. Scott says, "Good point, Gary. I don't buy organic as I can't afford it, but that's what I grow for my own. For me, having homegrown beans cooked as soon as they come off the plant is very special and better than organic." Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is why many of us do, because we want to know where our food comes from. This is really getting into something now, isn't it? Vacuum stuck, says T-Crowell. Yeah, except in space. Did most of us go to raised beds to sort of become organic? I went to raised beds because I like to have defined paths and defined areas that are my vegetable beds. That's why I went to raised beds. I'm also on a clay soil, which this clay soil here is incredibly tough to dig. Not I dig, but yeah. That's why I went to raised beds. But anybody else, did you go to raised beds to be organic? I thought about nematodes, but agree that nature is a better way of dealing with them. The slugs in my garden are very persistent. Yeah, exactly right. And that's why I don't get many problems with slugs and snails. I did last year. Last year was a very wet year, but this year we're not getting many problems with slugs and snails, although there are getting a few problems in certain areas. Jenny says, "Townfield to stick some more on. We are all on our way." Oh, I meant to ask Chili Kate, how was your festival? Was it the festival village show? Sorry, your cooking dinner, so I know you're a bit busy. Scott says, "For me, it's about being fresh, not so much organic shop bought." Funny enough, one of the things I've often wondered about as well when it comes to, is it buying organic or is buying local better? If there's food miles on your organic produce, is that worse than being organic? I don't know. Digret says, "I stopped using nematodes 2 years ago after I found out about their effect on the natural order." I'm with you on that. Over on the Instagram, B Wayne Designs has joined. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. I met that young lady yesterday who lives quite close to me. And we were at a festival yesterday, and I'll tell you about that in a moment, actually. But had a lovely conversation about community gardens. Rob says, "I remember when I was a kid, my dad would throw slug pellets on next door's garden." Yeah, it's not right, is it? It's not right. Again, I've not touched slug pellets in over 10 years. And I'll admit I used to. Because I always thought that was what we had to do. But now I've learned a lot. In fact, it's probably been longer than 10 years, more 15 years. But I've learned and I've adapted and I've grown from that. And I think that is a really important thing. Jenny says, "I have bird poo that has aqua blue in it, slug pellets, but I have watched a hedgehog die a slow, terrible death from slug pellets, even though apparently not harmful to pests." Yeah. Yeah, this is why I say I'm not a scientist. I don't know, but I still avoid using them. Nicholas says homegrown always tastes better even than organic, as you don't know how long ago the veg are harvested. Fresh is always good. Fresh vegetables is always a key thing. Digwell says, I went to no dig raised beds because I'm a lazy git. Stuart says, another point is if we go out our own, just think of the plastic. If we grow our own, just think of the plastic bags we save from landfill. Yeah. Yeah. Why do we need so much packaging around our vegetables? Turbo Stream says, my slugs will venture across paving slabs, then climb up metal poles, across metal shelves, and get to my seedlings that get picked off and taken to the other end of the garden. So slugs, snails, they're incredibly clever animals. You know, they will use their weight to pull down a branch so that they can get to the vegetables, get to your lettuce. They're incredibly amazing animals. Rebecca says, and also if you're all the same, I can cope if my hosta have been nibbled. I've lost the odd lettuce leaf. My garden allotment is a real garden, not a show garden. Good point. Good point. I mean, I grow food to eat. And I've always said that I grow food to eat. I don't grow it for show. I grow it to eat. Admittedly, there may be a show garden coming up next year, but that's a totally different subject. But I grow food to eat. I don't grow it because I want it. I mean, I want it to look good at the same time, but I don't care if slugs and snails have nibbled some of it. I mean, slugs and snails in the compost bin are what we need. They help produce compost. They eat decaying matter. So they were, again, that ecosystem again. But it's not just slugs and snails. There are other pests that I think slugs and snails are generally the number one pest, but there are more that can be a bit of a problem too. Gary says, fresh is important to me too. I care more about my food being fresh. Warm raspberries off the bush today. I tell you, I've got some of the best tasting gooseberries at the moment that taste absolutely delicious. Lovely cherries, red currants, black currants, tayberries, so much soft fruit at the moment. We're just loving it. Turbo Stream says, my shed had a few cartons of slug pellets that my late mum used. If the bin men went on strike, I would take them to, are they still on the strike in your area? I would take them to the tip. I certainly haven't used any. This is good. This is exactly what I want to hear is, so let's take slugs and snails then. How do you deal with slugs and snails organically? How do you deal with slugs and snails organically? Use Vaseline or Vicks Vapor Rub on the poles. Vicks is best. Yeah. Chili Kate says, maybe you need to update your knowledge on slug pellets. Things change. I agree. I know things change. This is why I'm saying I'm not a scientist. I'm not a scientist. I have read that they have changed. I just still don't want to use them. I don't like killing anything. I just don't like. I don't like killing anything unnaturally. But I'm not producing food for a living, you could say. That was 50 years ago, but he never had slugs on his garden. Yeah. Most supermarket apples are 6 to 9 months old when they are sold, UK ones included. Yeah, again, no idea on that. Jenny says, I won't buy any fruit/veg imported apart from bananas, as the family like them still organic. When they buy their own food, I won't be buying them. Very low food miles here. Absolutely right there. Absolutely right there. Potatoes months old. Again, it's the supply system. If we demand certain foods all year round, they're going to be available all year round, aren't they? And this is where problems come in. Nicholas says, when I was growing up, we used the local greengrocer, etc. Veg was put in paper bags and potato wrapped in newspapers. Yes, I remember the odd newspapers, but fish and chips used to come in newspapers. That was banned for some reason, wasn't it? That was banned for some reason. Don't mind spuds. My own are 6 months. Well, we store things, don't we? I used Vaseline Digwell and it did work on the poles. There we go. Jenny says, I took my slug pellet knowledge from the vet at the local wildlife hospital. It has to be said, there will be old slug pellets in people's sheds. Yeah, I mean, the old slug pellets that got banned, we know they did some bad things to the wildlife. As I said, I have been told and I have read that slug pellets sold these days are meant to be not poisonous to the animals. I still come back to the fact that I don't like using anything. I don't mind birds eating slugs and snails because that's natural. Rob's, but again, I'm only coping with 500 square meters in total, so it's not the same as coping with acres and acres of land. Rob says we had our first spuds today and they were yummy. Yeah, spud season, bloody fine. Miles, not Mike's. I kind of guessed that. Our bin men have been on strike since January, all out since March the 11th. Yeah, I heard that on the news. I don't deal with slugs. I don't deal with slugs and snails. I do have birds, frogs, etc., etc. Gary says, Richard always does so well translating, making sense of my rubbish typing. I do my best. I do my best. Over on Instagram, B. Wayne, unfortunately, I can't bring Instagram comments up on the show, but she says, I love the satisfaction and happiness from picking fresh organic food from my small urban garden. It's good that we have a life in the garden. I just plan to grow a few extras, knowing that we will get some, that some will get eaten. I think that's to say, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is it. I don't remove yeah, eating, she finishes it off with. I don't remove pests, intervene, or do anything other than wait. Yeah, again, this is the natural order of things, isn't it? I'm the same. Stuart says, for slugs and snails, I tend to feed them to the birds because if you pop them over the fence, they always come back. We had marked them to see. Yeah, they do. I know snails have like a homing thing so they can find their way back home. So interesting. As I said, slugs and snails are incredibly intelligent animals. We don't give them the credit. I mean, we don't really know, as amateurs, we don't know enough about them, really. And again, this comes back to a lot of the stuff we are reading. Jenny says he does, Gary. Talking about me there. Digwell says most people use slug pellets wrong. They need to be scattered around the outside of the beds. They contain bran, which slugs love. Sprinkle them inside, and it draws slugs past the fresh veg. Yeah, I used to use just remembering wool pellets. That was quite good at deterring slugs and snails. Apparently, they don't like the sort of they don't like wool, but I don't know. I've never seen a bird eat a slug. Is it a myth? I've seen them eat them. I've seen them. I'm sure I have. Got me doubting myself. I mean, I saw driving to Andover yesterday. This is maybe a bit morbid, but I was driving to Andover yesterday. I'll give you a bit of a warning. And there was a bird of prey that had caught something. I couldn't work out what it was until it had dropped it onto the road. It was a squirrel. As I said, it's nature, isn't it? It's nature. It's nasty, but it's nature. Managed to get a ripe cherry of my tree. Can't believe I got there before the blackbirds. Have fresh strawberries from the garden this morning. Also picked large blackcurrants and yellow raspberries. Yum. Yum, yum, yum. Gary says there was a fascinating documentary on Disney where a family bought a farm but had problems with pests. They found natural solutions to each of the problems, but each solution had caused more problems. What was that called? That sounds interesting. Idaho says, yeah, we didn't have plastic garbage bags either. We wrapped garbage in newspaper before we put it in the garbage can. Yeah, it's true. Doodle Sparkle, I used that starch stuff and the slugs stayed off. The sweet peas, and they were amazing now. Yeah, that starch stuff is meant to be good stuff. Again, we've spoken about that quite a bit in the past. We've mixed results. Organic slug treatment on my allotment, says Chitty Kate. Slug pellets. Sorry, don't apologise. As I've said before, we do not judge anybody on this thing at all. You do what you want to do. There's no right or wrong. We're not here for that. It's all about discussion, and it's got to be done respectfully. Digwell says, I rescued a hedgehog. I got told off by the rescue centre for offering it a slug. She said they really don't, they do not really like slugs. They are last resort if nothing else is around. Yeah. Again, you've mentioned this quite a few times. I've got to contact a hedgehog expert to get them on and discuss this more, actually, and find out the truth. Because again, as is becoming more and more aware, there's a lot of old wives' tales, a lot of misinformation about a huge range of things that even we think we're doing the right thing on. So again, it's that discussion, isn't it? Jenny says, if they bring back more hedgerows in the fields, there will be more predators for any pests. Yeah. Hedgerows are coming back, aren't they? I believe. Scott says, slug control can bring in wildlife, plant more than needed, etc. All things I need to more of, but that's idealistic. So I expect less crops and treat them like an expensive, rare ingredient. Yeah. There's a saying, I can't remember exactly the saying, but it's like you sow 3 seeds, one for the crow, one for the slugs, and one for me, one for the pot. Is that right? Something like that? I think Turbo Stream's used that comment before. Digwell says, I used to drop my kids off in the next village. They kept coming home. Birds of prey need to eat too. Yeah, exactly. Home and instinct is strong. Crows, buzzard, and owls eat slugs and snails. Did not know that, but it doesn't surprise me. That sounded delicious. Our council have now provided wheelie bins, but you have to use black bin bags. They don't take the rubbish. I think that is wrong as they are tipped into a dust cart. I agree, actually. Ours do the same. They've got to be in the black bag. And when you think about it, it does make sense. The biggest little farm is the documentary. I'm going to check that out tonight. I will watch that tonight. Chili Kate says, if anyone is interested, naan bread in the pizza oven looks fantastic. Oh, love to see a photo. Digler says, newspaper was banned for fish and chips because in the past the ink was made of petroleum-based products and contained heavy metals. There we go. This kind of tallies up with what we're saying. If newspapers are coming into contact with our food, this is the chemical side of things, isn't it? The chemical side of things. One for the rook, one for the crow, one to die and one to grow. There we go. I knew there was a saying. It was my late friend who said, one for you and one for the wildlife. There we go. Hedgehogs eat beetles, worms, grubs, berries, slugs, and small frogs. I think bin bags is to reduce the rubbish when blown around when tipping. Yeah, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. Scott also said, nothing wrong with your methods, Kate. The important thing is that we grow our own, just doing it much better than buying it from a supermarket or no matter how we grow. I think the important thing is we all grow food to, well, something we said earlier is we grow food to know where it comes from. We know what's gone into it. And if you are using nematodes, slug pellets, manure, you know what has gone into it. And that is the comforting thought, isn't it? We went from black bags to bins with no black big bags inside. Now you say it does make it a bit crazy why we have bin bags, doesn't it? 4 seeds in a hole, one for the mouse, one for the crow, one to rot, and one to grow. So there's variations on that saying as well. What else have we got? Oh, crikey, I've just seen the time. Nick, the place where I moved to requires very little trash bags, blah, blah, blah. It's because they transfer all the rubbish from one location to another and bits fly away. Right, let's go to the cook-along. It's a 4-minute video, so I better get this in quickly. This week's cook-along was a potato salad. Okay, so for this week's cook-along, we're going to be making a potato salad. And luckily, I've harvested some first early potatoes. Now, I've given these potatoes a bit of a wash, and you can clearly see we've got a bit of scab. Now, scab, to be honest, isn't the end of the world, but I'm just going to peel them off anyway. Actually, you don't, when it comes to first earlies, you don't necessarily need to peel them. They could sometimes just sort of, the skin would just fall away, but I'm just peeling them to be on the safe side. And then what we'll do is we'll cook
these potatoes. Only for a few minutes, not long, in hot pan of salted water for 5 minutes. Not long at all. So while the potatoes cook, we're now going to make the solid dressing, I guess you could call it, for the potato salad. So again, from the garden, we got some spring onions, which I'm just going to roughly chop. Try and use a lot of it, that'll do. Chop these up a little bit more. I really need to learn more knife skills. Perhaps that could be a mission one week. Get Chef Scott to do a tutorial on knife skills that I have to learn. Okay, I think that's enough of the chopped spring onions, so I'm going to add that to this bowl. Not going to waste any. Then what I've got, some of my homegrown garlic that's going in here as well. Add a bit of flavour to the thing. And also we've got homemade mayonnaise that Amanda has lovingly made today. Nice thick mayonnaise as well. Look at that, that's good mayo. I think that's about enough. I'm going to give that a taste. Right, if the potatoes are ready, we'll add those. So there we go, potatoes are cooked, so we're just going to cut those up a little bit more. We also had in our fridge some of our leftover potatoes that we had for dinner the other day, and I'm going to throw those in as well, just because I can, and it adds, well, wastes less food. As you can tell, these potatoes are quite hot, which is a good sign. There we go. Sometimes the skin on, although I don't like potato skin, sometimes the skin on does make a better potato salad. What do you think on that? Skin on or off? Okay, so all this potato is going into the mix with the mayonnaise, the spring onions, the garlic. I often actually add chopped up cucumber as well, which always does go down rather well. Just give us a good mix, make sure everything's coated in that lovely delicious mayonnaise. There we go, more or less made. We'll find out what it tastes like back in the studio. Oh, there we go. That is the potato salad. Looks delicious. Normally I think I said cucumber I add to it. I meant gherkins, same thing really. But pickled gherkins I normally add to it as well. That's good. Although the potatoes could have done with a bit more cooking. That is good potato salad. Homemade mayo, spring onion, garlic and potatoes homegrown. Delicious, delicious, delicious. I'm going to give that a 9 out of 10 because the potatoes could have done with a cooking a little bit more. Turbo Stream says most potato printing is now vegetable based. It used to be oil based when I started the printing trade, along with some nasty chemicals. Yeah. Digwa says use pesticides. 1 for me, 2 for me, 3 for me, 4 for me. Turbo Stream says 4 seeds in a hole and no one will grow and none will grow. Oh dear. Oh dear. Soy based. Mission: wear a Darth Vader mask when cooking so you look the part. Yeah, I know. It's my kickboxing injuries where I can't breathe through one of my nose. Turbo Stream says stay away from knives, kids. Have you? Scott says, I like that idea, Richard. Knife skills are easy to develop with simple techniques, mostly non-chopping hand placement. Yeah. I get the idea. I think I just need some lessons on knife skills. I love the homemade recipe, says Doodle Sparkle. Thank you very much. We do our best. By the way, if you want that mission, do #mission learn knife skills. The more times it's entered, the more chance it has of turning up on the result. We've got 3 entries so far. Jenny says skin on. She prefers the skin on. Digra says leftover potatoes are better for diabetics. They have resistant starches that have less impact on blood sugar levels. I did not know that. I love a potato salad. Scott says looks good. Can't beat a potato salad. Digra says looks good. Always popular at the barbecue. Yeah. Can you make coleslaw one week? Again, this is up to you guys. We have to do a hashtag for that recipe. Coleslaw. There was a recipe earlier: the hot noodles or coleslaw. 2 choices. 2 choices so far. It's up to you to decide which you would want me to do. Digra says only joking, buddy. The force is strong with you. I know. You forgot the mission, Nicola. You've forgotten the mission. #mission. Learn better knife skills. Knife skills are easy. You'll soon learn after all fingers add up to 9. You know who to ask to show you knife skills, then, don't you? Well, yes, Chef Scott or Tom. Tom was the other one I could ask as well. Thank you. Tom, for those that don't know, Tom is Margaret's son, who I guess you could call Margaret my stepmother. That's probably the easiest way to describe it. It's complicated sometimes when it comes to families. But yeah, knife skills is another one if you would like that. Now, let's have a look at the photos. Oh God, I've done it wrong. The photos that has been sent in this week. As always, we've had a good collection come in, and I've just realised I keep cocking it up by moving the screen. So bear with me. Here we go. Your photos. So first of all, Robert sent me these photos. He sent me a collection of photos today, but this is the one that I chose because it tallies up with what we're talking about. The variety is Winston. His potatoes. They look great, don't they? Looking yummy. Absolutely delicious. Good old first early potatoes. Stuart has been tidying up his greenhouse, I believe, under the watchful eye of his wife at the same time. But the greenhouse looks really nice and tidy. I've got to say, I would wish my shed looked like this. More news on the shed next week, though, because we've got a big update coming about that. Jenny has harvested some soft fruit. We've been talking about that quite a bit today. Strawberries, raspberries, pineberries, lots of good stuff in that photo. Kate has started her mushroom growing adventures. These mushrooms, Cayley Brothers, I met one of their bosses yesterday. A lot of people are getting into growing mushrooms at the moment. Nothing I can do about it with my mushroom allergy, unfortunately, but we do like growing food here, so we would like to see more about how you go about growing mushrooms. Digwell is baking, he says, and this is a photo of his legs covered in or suffering with the heat. We haven't talked about the heat much, have we? This week we haven't talked about the heat. I'm amazed. Stephen has got these lovely beetroots which look fantastic, and the color through those leaves also, I really like that sunlight just coming through. Looks fantastic. Nathan has harvested his garlic and is really pleased with what he's got. I'm actually rather impressed myself with what he's got too. So well done there. It looks brilliant. Looks fantastic. Good lot of garlic to enjoy.
And Scott has harvested his broad beans. Look beautiful in this wicker basket as well. Fantastic, fantastic. And Nikki is asking if our onions were ready for harvesting. I said they're looking like they're nearly there. Give it a couple more weeks, and you should be there. Now, if you've got any photos you want to send in, please send them into our Facebook group. Send to me via social media or email me, richard@veggroundpodcast.co.uk. That's richard@veggroundpodcast.co.uk. I got to say, a great lot of photos this week. It was really hard to choose some of my favorites, to be honest with you, because there was some really, really good photos, all of which I really enjoyed. What have we got in the comments? Oh, we're going into overtime, so I'm not going to do a Richard's rant. We'll save it for next week. Cooked chilled rice is the same as cooked chilled potatoes for diabetics. Normally 12 in Birmingham, talking about fingers. Make egg on toast for comedy purposes only. Well, it could come up. Now you've put that in, it could come up. I need to send in a sweet potato update, says Gary. Yeah, please do, because mine failed. I'd love to see how yours got on. Probably can count that high. Great garlic, Nathan, says Gary. And Rebecca says that's a subject for another week. How does our plot cope in the heat? Could we talk about that next week? Does that feel a bit topical? Would that work for next week? Talk about how our plots cope in the heat. Great photos and harvests, everyone. Great, says Nathan. Digwell says great pick, guys. Nicola says nice bit of harvest. Need some lotion on those legs, Digwell. Great photos, everyone. We had those spuds today, 1 hour after those were taken. Yeah, absolutely. We do that. It's great, isn't it? I can't take credit for the greenhouse. Okay. We get the idea. Is that everything? Is that everything? I think it is. I think it is. So all we've got to do is we have got to find out what the mission for next week is. And guys, while we do this, what is, hopefully that's came up on the screen. What is it that you want me to cook next week? Do you want me to do the ramen noodles or what was the other one? It was a good one there, and I can't remember what it was. There was a choice of two. Let me know what one you want me to do. Let's do this draw. There we go. Everybody that's entered hashtag mission, their name went into this draw, and whoever this selects to be the winner is going to be it. It was Scott's mission. Scott, remind me, what was your mission? Remind me. Look, coleslaw, that was the other one. That was the other recipe idea. Coleslaw or ramen or the noodles. So what is everybody saying? We're going to have to, let's have a look. Where were we? Nicholas says it'll be rain next week if we need to talk about the weather. Of course, you know it will. Great topic for heat and drought. Okay, we'll do that. Hooli. The screen's gone weird again. I'm going to have to move it over here. Oh, that's no good because all the comments have disappeared. Oh, where are they? So I saw, I've gone way too past them. Honestly, one day I'm going to need I can't even move the screen. I can't even move it now. One day I'm going to need, there we go. There we go. Right, where were we? Noodles, coleslaw. We need to choose a recipe. Yeah, that's what I'm throwing through. This has been really hard at the moment. I don't know what's changed. Coleslaw, please. Create a bed that could get organic certificate and visit and compare results. Okay, we'll do that. Thanks for a great evening as always, says Nicola. Thanks all. I learned a lot. So it looks like coleslaw came out on top. It takes 5 years. Well, we've got to keep going for 5 years. Coleslaw and coleslaw. It looks like it's going to be coleslaw for next week. And the organic bed. So luckily, I've got a bed that has just came empty, so we can do that for that bed. Right, guys, it is time now to wrap this one up and get out of here for today. Thanks so much for joining us. Again, it's been an interesting discussion, and I think there's opened our eyes a lot. It's been very interesting. Hopefully, we can keep this sort of discussions going. Have a really good discussion on something, and keep going from there. Anyway, guys, I'll be back again next Sunday at 6. You take care. I'll see you then.